Terracotta Tattwa, I wanted to follow up on the earlier presentation on violence carried out by Hindutva on Indian minorities. This is a response to the Hindu Council's answer in a TVNZ Q&A interview when asked about Hindutva violence on minorities in India, denying such violence. In my earlier presentation, I documented the impact of the violence carried out by Hindutva organizations, specifically the RSS, the VHP, the Bajrang Dal, and related organizations on Christians in India. In this particular conversation, I will document the impact of the violence on Muslims in India. Now, between 1964 and 2024, over 9,000 people have died and over 300,000 people have either been injured or displaced within the context of communal violence in India. This communal violence has disproportionately impacted Muslims. I will take some specific examples of the impact of the violence on Muslims and discuss particular incidences of communal tensions. In 2002 in Gujarat, in the Gujarat violence, there were approximately 2,000 people that were killed. Now, the official figures list this at 1,044. Of the 1,044 people, according to the official figures, 790 Muslims were killed. And here it's worth noting that other reports document double the figures, that is close to 1,900 or 2,000 people that were killed, again disproportionately Muslims. In the Muzaffarnagar riots in 2013 in the state of Uttar Pradesh, according to the Hindu, 62 people were killed, 42 of these are Muslims. In the Delhi riots of 2020, which has been described by academics as a pogrom in the sense that the state was allegedly involved in carrying out the violence and supporting Hindutva forces. The reports on print media such as the Hindu note that there were 53 people killed. Of those, 38 were Muslims. So what this documents is that Muslims have been disproportionately impacted by the riots. Often the riots take the form of Hindutva-linked mobs starting the attack on Muslims. The attacks take the form of attacks on Muslim shops, as I have documented elsewhere, attacks on Muslim neighborhoods and communities, and they also take forms of sexual violence such as rape directed at Muslim women. Now, according to Professor Thomas Blom Hansen, Stanford University, across India, and I quote here, a lot of the violence perpetrated against Muslims these days is actually perpetrated by subsidiaries of the Hindu nationalist movement, end quote. The organizations that are linked with this violence often are the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the RSS, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, the VHP, the Bajrang Dal, and their subsidiaries. Now, if we look at the roots of this violence, we have to go back to the fundamental tenets of the Hindutva ideology, and I will wrap up with reading an excerpt from the writings of Goldwalker, who drew analogy from the Nazi context of Germany, and particularly the references to Hitler. And here again, I quote, "Race pride at its highest has been manifested here. Germany has also shown how well nigh impossible it is for races and cultures having differences going to the root to be assimilated into one united whole. A good lesson for us, for use in Hindustan, to learn and profit by, end quote. So what this actually documents is the nature of the violence and how it is connected to the overarching ideology that sees as Muslims outsiders and therefore legitimizes the infrastructure of violence. It constructs Hindus in danger, or the narrative of Hindu khatre mein hai, that then is used to deploy and mobilize fear, which then is the basis of the violence. Since the election of Narendra Modi, there has also been unprecedented rise in violence in the form of lynchings, in the form of cow vigilante violence, in the form of targeted attacks around the narrative of love jihad. Each of these forms of violence are embedded in and connected to discourse circulated by Hindutva organizations that construct various ideas of jihad, from land jihad, the threat of the Muslim stealing land, to love jihad, the Muslim threatening to convert Hindu women through romance, to the notion of the Muslim rapist, to ideas of COVID or Corona jihad, Muslims spreading terror by intentionally spreading COVID. We saw this amidst COVID. To religious and prayer jihad, suggesting that Muslims take over spaces of prayer by using various forms of threatening tactics. Now, each of these symbolic articulations are connected to actual acts of violence. In our research here at CARE, documenting the scope, extent, and impact of Islamophobic hate spread by Hindutva, we have noted in earlier presentations that Muslims in India feel a sense of insecurity at the hate proliferating online, and they see this threat of the hate proliferating online with various forms of offline violence. So in summary, Hindutva as an ideology is very much rooted in the othering of India's minorities, particularly Christians and Muslims. This process of othering is connected to the language of dehumanization, which in turn turns to genocidal language, as we have seen in the Haridwar hate assemblies, calling for actual acts of violence directed at Muslims. We also see proliferation of the Islamophobic discourse around elections. So there is a political linkage that is critical to observe here. And of course, this hate discourse is particularly prominent in spaces where the Hindutva aligned party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, feels threatened. So the narrative of the Hindu in danger offers then a propaganda framework to recruit participants, particularly when the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party feels threatened. It is important that we critically interrogate the denial of this violence, and we continue to foreground the ways in which this violence is both symbolically crafted, circulated across offline and online spaces, and then connected to actual acts of violence. Thank you.